Good day, everyone. I am Mark Bello, and you're listening to Headline News. Avoiding sensitive issues, Biden disables chat for remote conference. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's team disabled the chat feature at his Zoom virtual press conference. Prior to this, reporters from several media outlets had used it to complain that the opportunity to ask questions at the online conference was not fair enough. Some U.S. media outlets argued that it reduced the opportunity for reporters to ask sensitive questions. The Daily Telegraph said reporters from several media outlets were frustrated with the selective responses to questions from Biden and his team, because they seemed to have a group of the most favored reporters whose questions were always given priority at virtual press conferences. From the New York Times, CNN, The Washington Post, and a handful of others. Meanwhile, reporters from most other media outlets, such as the center-left Associated Press and Fox News, were often turned away from the virtual conference. Last week, Sam Stein, a reporter for the center-left U.S. media outlet Politico, wrote on the conference software Zoom Chat, "There are tons of folks looking to ask questions, and since this is being done once a week, could we please go longer or at least hold more frequent briefings? Any chance for a few more questions? There are a lot of folks here with questions," added Zeke Miller, a reporter for the Associated Press. "Is there a point in saying we want to ask questions if you only call on the same small group every week?" asked Andrew Feinberg, a White House reporter. However, the Biden team turned off the software chat feature during a recent virtual press conference after journalists continued to complain. Sam Stein then tweeted, "The Biden transition team appears to have disabled the public chat feature on its transition Zoom calls, a place where I and others have been routinely complaining to them to take more questions." Right-wing outlet Fox News reported that Biden's team did not comment on the shutdown of online comments, but the team said last month that they valued transparency and said the press's job was to hold Biden accountable during his tenure. A Biden spokesman said that he, Joe Biden, also believes, though, that it's the media's job to hold him accountable, also saying that he's there to do the people's work, and he welcomes that relationship. He welcomes their role, the media's role, in our democracy. Compared to the last 4 years, the spokesman said, "I think it will be, frankly, the polar opposite of what we've seen over the last 4 years. I think you'll see a huge change in the culture in the way this White House treats the media." The Daily Telegraph, however, believes that the Biden team's practice of questioning only a handful of people will lead to fewer unexpected questions, especially on sensitive topics such as the ongoing U.S. Justice Department investigation into Biden's son Hunter's finances and their foreign dealings. GOP senators pressured Hawley for explanation on conference call, who wasn't even present. On Thursday, December 31st, the Republican Party held a conference call and planned to collectively pressure Senator Josh Hawley, who was preparing to challenge the Electoral College results. The absence of Hawley made the scene awkward and made some Republican leaders quite angry. U.S. media outlet Axios reported that, according to a source on Thursday morning, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had an extraordinary conference call with fellow Senate Republicans. The report revealed that Mitch McConnell said his January 6 vote certifying Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election will be the most consequential I have ever cast, according to two sources briefed on the private remarks. McConnell believed that challenging the election results would put the Republicans in a horrible position for re-election in 2022, forcing them to choose between defying the most popular politician in the party, Donald Trump, and undermining democracy. Internally, Republican senators were not happy with Hawley because it will force them to take the ultimate loyalty test on January 6th towards President Donald J. Trump. Politico was the first to report this news. At the meeting, Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey pushed back on Hawley. He disapproved of Hawley's plan, saying he wanted to defend the integrity of Pennsylvania's elections. But then he found out that Hawley was not on the line, and the scene became awkward. On Thursday afternoon, Hawley sent an email to fellow senators, explaining why he did not attend that meeting. He wrote, "If you've been speaking to folks at home, I'm sure you know how deeply angry and disillusioned many people are, and frustrated that Congress has taken no action." Hawley also told Fox News on Wednesday, "We have no congressional investigation of the fraud. We need it. We've had no congressional action. We need that to protect our elections going forward." Pence's legal team responds to lawsuit. The House and Senate should be the defendants. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence asked a federal district court in Texas on December 31, 2020, to dismiss the case against him in response to a lawsuit filed by U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert. Pence's defense team said that Gohmert should have sued the U.S. House and Senate, which will certify the Electoral College's presidential nominee, thus having the wrong defendant in the case. Vice President Pence appointed Assistant Deputy Attorney General John V. Coughlin to represent him in the Texas case, according to the Washington Times. Gohmert's lawsuit argued that the vice president had discretion over the counting of Electoral College votes. However, Pence's attorney says, in their documents submitted to the court on December 31st, that it is a walking legal contradiction. Gohmert's team also filed a court document requesting an expedited hearing in the case. They said their legal team had approached Pence's legal team about the case, but discussions between the two sides failed to reach a consensus. U.S. Representative Louis Gohmert and a group of Arizona lawmakers sued Vice President and Senate President Mike Pence in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Texas last Sunday, December 27, 2020, prohibiting Pence from counting the electoral votes submitted by the swing states' governments at the joint session on January 6th, and asking that the court authorize Pence to count only the electoral votes submitted by the swing states' state legislatures instead. In his statement, Gohmert argues that Vice President Pence, as President of the Senate, has absolute authority and discretion under the 12th Amendment to refuse to count either set of votes, or to choose which set of votes to count in the event that two sets of Electoral College votes are presented. A joint session of the U.S. Congress will certify on January 6th the Electoral College votes submitted by the Electoral College of each state on December 14th. However, due to serious allegations of voter fraud in the 7 swing states in this year's U.S. election, 2 sets of Electoral College votes were submitted to Congress. One set was selected by the state governments in favor of Biden, and the other set was selected by the state legislatures in favor of Trump. In a joint session on January 6th, if at least one senator and one representative challenges the electoral votes, the House and the Senate will need to discuss and decide which set of electoral votes is legitimate, and then make a final ruling. According to some constitutional experts, when Vice President Pence counts the votes, he has the right to reject what he considers to be illegitimate and instead decide to read what he considers to be legitimate. So Representative Gohmert took him to court, asking to authorize him to count the electoral votes submitted by the state's state legislatures. Previously, the Amistad Project, a conservative legal group, had already taken Vice President Pence and the U.S. House and Senate, as well as the state governments and legislatures of 5 swing states, to court on December 22nd of last year over similar grounds. Biden nominated former Obama administration officials to key Department of Defense positions. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden announced on Wednesday, December 30th, that he has nominated 3 former senior Obama administration officials for key positions at the Pentagon. This nomination has been praised by the foreign policy establishment. In a press release, the Biden transition team said, "Today, President-elect Joe Biden announced his nomination of Dr. Kathleen Hicks as the Deputy Secretary of Defense and Dr. Colin Kahl as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy." Biden said, "Dr. Kathleen Hicks and Dr. Colin Kahl have the broad experience and crisis-tested judgment necessary to help tackle the litany of challenges we face today, and all those we may confront tomorrow." He added, "They will be trusted partners to me, the Vice President-elect and Secretary of Defense designate Lloyd Austin, as well as our dedicated civilian and military team, as we work to restore responsible American leadership on the world stage." The press release made by the Biden transition team listed the challenges facing the armed forces as follows: keeping our country safe and secure, playing a key role in executing the logistics associated with COVID-19 vaccine distribution, restoring our alliances, supporting and equipping our service members and caring for them and their families, addressing the accelerating security threat posed by the climate crisis, modernizing our armed forces and preparing for the conflicts of the future and winning their strategic competition for the 21st century. Hicks is currently Senior Vice President and Director of the International Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS. She previously served as Principal Deputy Under Secretary of Defense for Policy during the Obama administration, where she was responsible for defense policy, strategy, plans, and forces. If confirmed, she would become the first female Deputy Secretary of Defense. Kahl is currently co-director of the Center for International Security and Cooperation, CISC, and a professor by courtesy in the Department of Political Science at Stanford University. He served as Deputy Assistant to Barack Obama and National Security Advisor to Joe Biden from 2014 to 2017. He was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Middle East Affairs from 2009 to 2011. Biden also announced the nomination of another former Obama administration official, Kelly Magsamen, as the new Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. Biden's transition team gave high compliments to the 2 top Department of Defense nominees. However, conservative media journalist Chuck Ross pointed out that the top Pentagon policy pick, Kahl, had pushed the Russia collusion hoax. He tweeted in 2017 that Steele's Trump-Russia dossier holds up pretty well. This concludes today's broadcast. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for the next headline news.